Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here to bring you our hitters report for today, Wednesday, July 8th. The idea of our hitters report is we try to find the pitchers and what each pitcher's weakness is and try to get some of the bats that we think are the guys that you should be targeting against those pitchers on the day. We go through them one by one, mention some of the pitchers who we think are guys that you can target against, and some of the bats who profile to be the best guys against them. The first guy that we're going to talk about today is Chris Rusin from the Colorado Rockies. He's going up against the Los Angeles Angels today. He's a left-handed pitcher who's allowed a 290 batting average this season to right-handed bats. And over the course of the last 3 years, he's allowed right-handed bats to hit over 300 against them. The guy who profiles out as the best play today is obviously Mike Trout. Trout has a 314 batting average against left-handed pitchers, an on-base plus slugging percentage of 986, which is extremely high, and he has 5 home runs and 70 at-bats so far this year. There's going to be a lot of guys looking at people in that Los Angeles Angels team. They're playing in Coors Field, which is always going to give them a bump. It's also made the salaries rise of all the guys over on the Angels today. Pujols is somebody who actually hits better against right-handed pitching, but he's been so hot lately, and he's such a good hitter that he's another guy you have to consider, although I'm not sure if I want to pay the price for him today. You have other guys like Johnny Giavotella, who's been leading off for them. He's not going to give you a lot of upside, but he is very cheap in spots, and leading off on top of that Angels order with all the guys hitting behind them, he's definitely somebody who should be in play. Cole Calhoun doesn't have the greatest matchup today, lefty on lefty, so he's probably not somebody to consider. But Eric Ibar, where he's still cheap, which is not in a lot of spots, is definitely somebody else who could be in play. He'll probably be hitting 5th in that Angels order today, and he's been a guy who's been driving in some runs and getting up with a lot of guys on base. Next guy I want to talk about is another left-hander, the young Matt Harrison from Texas. Let's go over his stats. In 2013, he allowed right-handed bats to hit 375 against him. In 2014, he allowed right-handed bats to hit 298 against them with a whip over 2. And so far this year, through his first 3 starts, actually, this is his first start this year, so we'll see if those numbers can continue. But the way that you want to attack Matt Harrison is with right-handed bats. Now, there's a lot of guys on that Arizona team that you want to go after. The number one option is obviously Paul Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt hits 377 against left-handed pitching, with 5 home runs and 69 at-bats so far this year. So he's obviously not cheap, but he is the best option today in Texas in that hitter's ballpark. He's probably going to have one of the lower home run props as well. So Goldie is definitely somebody who's going to be in play. Other guys to look at, A.J. Pollock is hitting 329 with 8 extra base hits and 73 at-bats against left-handed pitching. He'll probably be leading off or maybe batting 2nd or 3rd in that Arizona order today. What I'm hoping is they move up a guy like Nick Ahmed. Nick Ahmed is hitting 346 against left-handers so far this year. So he has been known to lead off sometimes against left-handed pitching. I would like it more for Pollock if Ahmed was on top of that order. That puts Pollock in a spot where he might be able to drive in some runs, which would only raise his overall value. His price has come up on most sites, so you're no longer getting the big discount by playing A.J. Pollock, but I do think this is a great spot for him. And for Nick Ahmed as well, if he gets in there and he's batting up on top of the order. If he's batting in the 7 or 8 hole, I don't like him as much, but if they do let him lead off, he's definitely one of the salary savers that you want to look at on the day. The last guy I wanted to mention is Yasmani Tomas. Now, he doesn't have the power that most people would think for a guy who's batting cleanup, but he is a 291 hitter against left-handed pitching with an on-base plus slugging of 831. He's got 7 extra base hits and 55 at-bats already against left-handed pitching, so he's another guy that you might want to consider. Next guy I want to talk about is somebody who's going to be targeted very heavily today, and that's John Danks. Let's just go over Danks' numbers. 2013, 2014, right-handed bats hit over 270 against him with 42 home runs. So far this year, right-handed bats are hitting 313 with 12 home runs and 62 innings pitched. So basically the way you want to attack a guy like Danks is with right-handed bats. He goes up against Toronto today. Toronto is the best team in the league against left-handed pitching. They hit left-handers with the most power. They have the highest on-base plus slugging by a mile. Their batting average is actually over 300, or was earlier in the week. It was over 300 against left-handed pitching as a team. And from top to bottom against left-handers, they can throw a whole right-handed heavy lineup at you where everybody has a little bit of home run power, and a lot of those guys are hitting, 280, 330. I mean, the numbers are just ridiculous when you look at it. A couple guys that we're going to mention, obviously, Josh Donaldson owns left-handed pitching. John Danks is not a very good left-handed pitcher, so obviously Donaldson is going to be one of the more popular options today. The problem with him is his price has come up everywhere. He is in a good hitter's ballpark. Home runs do tend to fly out of Comerica there in Chicago. But again, just keep in mind, Donaldson against a lefty is something everybody always likes to target. And against a guy like Danks, you're getting a real weak lefty. And I think that's definitely going to be one of the higher owned plays today. If you want a cheaper option at the same position, Danny Valencia is always in play against a left-handed pitcher. He's hitting 317 this year against left-handed pitching. Doesn't have as much power as Donaldson, obviously, but he has some pop as well. He can get you, he's one of those guys that can get a hold of one and get you a cheap home run, as he's done a couple times recently in lefty-righty matchups. Next guy I want to talk about is Chris Colabello. Colabello has been amazing so far this year, especially against left-handed pitching. 375 batting average, on-base plus slugging of 1.090, and 4 home runs and 48 at-bats so far this year. I know I didn't expect to see this when Chris Colabello came over. Most people didn't. He was a solid hitter in Minnesota, but definitely nothing that, foreshadowed him becoming a 350 hitter when he came up to Toronto. But as long as he's hot, as long as he's batting in the 5 or 6 hole in that order, he's definitely somebody that you have to respect. Whichever catcher is in for Toronto today is obviously going to be in play, whether that is Diana Navarro or Russell Martin. Both of those guys do all right against left-handed pitching, and depending on where they are in the lineup, Martin's been batting 5th lately. Navarro's been batting 6th when he's been in there, with Colabello sliding up to the 5 hole. So those guys are obviously in play. You could always look at a guy like Joey Batista. He's very good against basically left and right-handed pitching, has a lot of power. Against a guy like Danks, who gives up a lot of home runs, he's somebody that's going to be in play. Encarnacion, another guy with a ton of power against Danks, who gives up a lot of home runs. Another guy who you can look at and play, another one of those right-handed bats. Toronto is obviously going to be one of those teams that people stack a lot today. A little bit of a gas can in Danks going up against the Toronto offense that absolutely owns left-handed pitching. So I took a little bit of time to discuss all the guys in this game, because I definitely think that any one of them are going to be in play for your cash games, and you're going to see a lot of people stacking up this team in tournaments. Next guy I want to talk about is Matt Schumacher. He's been better against left-handers than right-handers. Right-handers have been better against him. But the thing with Schumacher is he has a high home run rate. He does give up a lot of home runs. So he's in Coors Field, which is a good hitter's park. And the right-handed bats are the guys who I think you should probably look to target against them. Tulo and Arenado are the 2 guys who've been the right-handed power on top of that Rockies order. And those are the 2 guys who I think are going to be the most in play. Again, neither one of them is cheap, so you really have to make some decisions. But I think Arenado makes a really nice swerve in a tournament off of a guy like Donaldson, who's going to be very highly owned. Both guys are in good spots to hit home runs. Donaldson's matchup is probably weaker than Arenado's, but that should also be the reason why his ownership is higher. And Arenado also has a pretty good chance to hit a home run today. So I definitely think that's a good swerve if you're looking to come off a guy like Donaldson in the tournament, or you want to do something other than a Toronto stack, which is going to be very popular. Next guy I want to talk about is Jeremy Hellicksen. Hellicksen has allowed left-handed bats to hit 307 against him with a whip of 1.76. He's going up against a Texas team today that has a lot of left-handed bats you can look at. Guys like Sin-Shu Chu and Rognit Odor are going to be up towards the top of that order. Neither one of them has amazing numbers so far this year, but they're both left-handed bats that hit better against righties. The 2 guys who I think are hot and you might want to make sure you have on your radar, the cheap option is Josh Hamilton. His price still hasn't come up to how good he is. Again, he's rounding himself back. He's getting back into shape. He's getting back his swing. But so far against right-handed pitching, he's hitting 320 with 2 home runs and 25 at-bats and a 9.86 on-base plus slugging percentage. So it was never, Hamilton has always had issues, but it's never been any issues with his talent. This guy was a former #1 overall pick, and he can absolutely smash a baseball. I mean, that is the one thing in this world that he does very well, and especially from the left side going up against right-handed pitching. So he's in a great matchup today, and his price is still cheap in spots. I definitely think he's one of those guys that you want to take a look at and maybe get some exposure to, because if he's in the lineup, there's a good chance that he's going to be producing. The guy who makes the most sense to use on this team is Prince Fielder. Fielder has a 392 batting average against right-handed pitching so far this year. with a 1.02 on base plus slugging percentage. He has 7 home runs and 189 at-bats and has a really, really good matchup here against Hellicksen, who struggles with left-handed bats and struggles with giving up home runs. So I think it's definitely a good spot for Fielder. He's a nice swerve off of guys like Goldie, who are going to be very highly owned today, and Pujols. You save a couple bucks with a guy like Fielder, and his upside is pretty much just as good. He's somebody who I think is cash game safe. He's usually getting a couple hits when he has his games. He drives in a couple runs. He does he does a lot for that Texas offense, especially when they go up against right-handed pitching. There's a couple other guys I want to target, just kind of outline for you. Against a guy like Drew Hutchinson, you can look at a guy like Melky Cabrera, I think, today. Over the last 30 days, Melky's been hitting .347 with 12 extra base hits. So that's 12 extra base hits and 95 at-bats. So he's been seeing the ball very well over the last month. His price is down because he hadn't had a great start to the season. He doesn't have a ton of power anymore. He's not going to steal you a ton of bases, but Melky is a professional hitter. He's a guy who's, been over 300 in his career often. I think he's even had a couple years where he's finished above like 315, 320. So this is a guy who can rack up the hits. Against a guy like Hutchinson, I definitely think that he's going to be in play. Hutchinson actually struggles the most against left-handed bats. So with Melky batting as a switch hitter, hitting from the left side, I definitely think that he's somebody you can look at today if you're looking for an outfield salary saver. CC Sabathia takes on Oakland today. It's tough for Oakland because Oakland doesn't have a ton of right-handed bats that you really want to target. CC's been really, really bad at home this year, and he's also been really bad against right-handed bats. Right-handed bats are hitting .329 against them, 18 home runs in 71 innings pitched. But if you think about that Oakland order, when they go up against a left-handed pitcher, you usually find yourself with a guy like Marcus Semien hitting up in maybe in the 2-hole. But he's not somebody who has a ton of power, so he's not really a kind of guy you want to target against CC. Zobrist is a switch hitter, but he's not great from he doesn't have great power numbers against left-handed pitching, so he's probably not somebody you want to target, although he could be in play today. The problem with him is his price has come up a lot, so I don't really think it's great value for your cash games. Maybe in a tournament, if you're hoping that he gets to CC, I definitely think anybody against CC at home, the way he has pitched at home this year, is in play. The guy who makes the most sense, though, the guy who I think is going to be really popular, if you're playing on Fantasy Aces tonight, he's probably going to be the guy who is the highest owned catcher. And I think he's pretty cheap in some other spots. On DraftKings, I think he's around 3,000. So you can get some other catchers in that same range. I don't think he's going to be that popular. But there's not a lot of other options in that 4,250 range over on Aces. So I definitely think that Josh Phegley is going to be somebody who you're going to see really high ownership on tonight over on Fantasy Aces. He has a .310 batting average with 3 home runs and 58 at-bats against left-handed pitching this year, and an on-base plus slugging percentage over 900. So he's definitely somebody who is going to be, one of the flyers that a lot of people are going to be using as their salary saver in order to fit in some of the big bats in that Colorado and LA game. Next guy I want to talk about, Michael Lorenzen. He's a pitcher for Cincinnati Reds. He doesn't have a large sample size because he just came up this year, but he's allowed left-handed bats to hit .298 against him with 6 home runs in 23 innings pitched. Now, going up against Washington, if you have a guy who struggles with left-handed bats and struggles with giving up home runs to left-handed bats, right away that screams Bryce Harper as somebody who's going to be in play. Harper's numbers this year against right-handed pitching is pretty ridiculous. He's got a .348 batting average, 20 home runs and 184 at-bats, and an on-base plus slugging of 1.213. I mean, that is one of the higher ones that I've seen all year, and I think he might even be leading the league in that category right now. I'd have to double-check on that, but, the way that this guy's been hitting, you really can't complain. Now, Harper's a guy that we like to target against right-handed bats. Lorenzen's a guy who struggles with home runs and also batting average to left-handed bats. So, I mean, the matchup is about as good as it can be here for Harper. The problem that I do have is without Denard Span, there's, it's obviously a weaker front to that lineup. And he also is missing about 4 or 5 big bats in that lineup. You got guys like Zimmerman hurt. You got guys like Span hurt. Rendon is out. I mean, that would basically be worth, those are basically the guys who would be hitting around him and creating protection for Bryce Harper in that lineup. And every one of them is hurt right now. You got guys like Michael Taylor leading off. If Harper hits in the 3-hole, I don't even know who they're going to be having behind him as his protection. So there's a good chance that he could get walked 2 or 3 times today. Obviously, if you can pitch around them, I think that's going to be something that they do. So as much as I love Harper, I don't know if I think, I don't know. There is a case to be made that he's not going to have a big upside game for a tournament today. But worst case scenario, even if he gets walked 2 or 3 times, I still think he gives you decent value as a cash game option if you can fit him in up there. Next guy I want to talk about is Jeremy Guthrie. Now, normally we love when Guthrie's on the mound because we can just take all those left-handed bats that are going up against him. He is absolutely horrible to left-handed bats. He's been horrible this year. He's been horrible for the last couple years against those lefties. But really, there's only 2 guys on Tampa Bay, maybe a third with one of those outfield options that you would even want to consider. The one guy who I think is the best option to take against Guthrie is going to be a guy like James Loney. Loney doesn't have a ton of power, but he is a very solid average hitter. If you can find him in a cheap spot and you want to put him in there, he can definitely rack up multiple hits today. He's 30 for 103 for a 291 batting average so far this year against right-handed pitching. And against a guy like Guthrie who really struggles with left-handed bats, Loney is probably the best option that you have on that Tampa Bay team to take advantage of, the profile as a guy that Guthrie struggles against. David DeJesus is another left-handed bat, finds himself batting in the cleanup hole sometimes for Tampa Bay when they face a right-handed pitcher. He also bats from the left side, so he's another guy that might be in play for you. I don't think he has a ton of upside, and, if you can find him dirt cheap somewhere, maybe he's worth a flyer. But it's definitely something I would only do in the tournament. I don't think it's a cash game play that you really want to make, even at that cheap price for him, because he's been known to throw up, an 0 for 4 game with 3 strikeouts every once in a while, even in a good matchup. Let's see. The next guy I want to talk about is Tom Koehler. Koehler struggles with left-handed bats with power. I think that means that David Ortiz could be a sneaky play today. Again, not really a guy I would use in cash games, but for a tournament, to come off of some of the guys who are going to be highly owned, like the Pujols and the Goldschmidts of the world, I definitely think that Ortiz is one of those guys. Plus, they're at home in Boston where he enjoys hitting, and I think at his price, he might be worth it for a tournament. To come down from some of those other guys, because Pujols and Goldschmidt are the top 2 priced options on basically every site tonight, and by a wide margin. So you do get a lot of savings if you come down to a guy like David Ortiz, and that money can be used elsewhere to help you differentiate your roster, get a better pitcher, maybe upgrade a bat or maybe upgrade 2 bats to, guys who are in much better spots and, have more upside. Let's see. That brings us to Andrew Cashner. Cashner's actually been a guy who struggles with left-handed bats. He's allowed a 293 batting average with a 1.79 whip and 10 home runs in 43 innings. Looking at that Pittsburgh team, there's really only 2 left-handed bats. I think a guy like Neil Walker, because of the position scarcity at second base, could be somebody who makes sense to use against them. Walker's got a 281 against right-handed pitching this year with 17 doubles and 6 home runs. So he's not a slap-hitting second baseman. He does have some extra base power. He usually bats somewhere around the 4 or 5 spot in the order. Lately, they've actually even been batting him in the 2-hole against right-handed pitching. So that could be something else that we see today. But I definitely think that Neil Walker, who is pretty cheap now at second base relative to some of the other options, is somebody who you can consider. Let's see. Scott Kazmir is a good pitcher, not somebody that I'm really looking to target, but he is a lefty, and he goes up against Chris Young of the Yankees. Chris Young of the Yankees has one of the highest WOBAs in the league against left-handed pitching, so he could be a sneaky contrarian play for you. His price is not that expensive on most of the sites, so he's also a salary-saving option. Definitely a big-time tournament play. He's been mashing left-handed pitching this year. He's been hitting them with power. He's been hitting them for average. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him today against a guy like Kashmir, who is pretty good. I mean, it's not going to be an easy matchup for him. But again, if it was an easy matchup, then, you wouldn't have that feeling in your stomach about it. And he probably wouldn't be low owned in a tournament. So keep that in mind, because he's definitely a guy that has the upside that can, help differentiate your roster and win you something today if he is able to get a hold of one. And like I said, he does have the highest WOBA in the league against left-handed pitching. So it's not out of the question. Last guy I want to talk about, you got the lefty Adam Morgan going up for Philly, which would likely mean that Kike Hernandez is going to be leading off for the Dodgers. If that is the case and Kiki's leading off, he's definitely somebody that I think you might want to take a look at. He's done a really good job in the leadoff spot for the Dodgers when they go up against left-handed pitching. And he's been able to, get a couple hits for you. He's even been able to go yard. He's stolen a base here or there, scores a lot of runs, and, really creates havoc. The best part about him, too, is his price is incredibly cheap. So if he is in there and he is leading off, I definitely think he's going to be a guy that is worth the value for you today. So that kind of wraps it up for us for some of the guys that we're targeting. As always, what we like to do here is point out guys that are in good spots for you. This way you can start making your short list early in the day. Wait till lineups come out later, see where some of these guys are batting. Based on the, the lineup placement, there are going to be some guys who you're going to upgrade and downgrade from this list. And there might even be a couple other options that you add onto this list. Guys who we didn't discuss, that are getting a spot start here or there, or guys that are moving up in the lineup because somebody else is getting a day off. Those are the things that you got to look at, because those are the things that can really give you a leg up on the competition. So make sure you come in and join us over at the rotocurve.com website. We're usually in chat every day from about 5 to 7 before lineups lock, discussing some of the lineups that came out, discussing some of the guys who are in good positions. We got a big community over there of players who play a lot. So if you have any questions and you're a new player, feel free to stop by. It's very easy to, throw your questions out there. You'll get a couple different opinions. And, everybody tries to throw their stats out there, the best stats they can find. So it'll help you narrow down your choices on the day. So thank you again for coming and giving us a little bit of your time today to do your DFS research. And as always, stay classy, DFS.